Good morning. All right. Welcome to the Commerce Committee. Today is Monday, April 24th, 2023. Madam Secretary, will you please call the roll?
Yes, Madam Chair. Chairwoman Davis.
Here.
Representative Brown.
Here.
Present. Representative Cox.
Here.
Present. Representative Fisher.
Here.
Present. Representative Fontenot. Present. Representative Gudo. Present. Representative Green. Representative Hilferty. Present. Representative Hollis.
Here.
Present. Representative Jordan.
Here.
Present. Representative LaFleur. Present. Representative McKnight. Representative Newell. Present. Representative Presley.
Oh, he's in the back.
Present. Representative St. Blanc. Present. Representative Tarver. Representative Thomas. Present.
All right, 14 members, and we have a quorum. Bit of housekeeping. Please silence your cell phones. If you do need to take a call, you are welcome to go out into the hall. And Representative Brown, as the newest member of this committee, have you read all your bills for today? Thank you. Because everyone else has. Look at Vanessa, yes. All right, members, we're going to start with Representative Dubuisson. And do you have a preference of which one you want to do first?
470, please.
Okay, we'll do 470. Ms. Beagrass, will you please read it into the record?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, this is House Bill number 470 by Representative Dubuisson, relative to cosmetology licensure, to provide for the powers and duties of the Louisiana State Board of Cosmetology, to require a website to assist in obtaining cosmetology licensure, to provide for requirements for cosmetology schools, to provide for hours of instruction needed for a cosmetology license, and to provide for related matters.
Thank you. All right. Welcome to the Commerce Committee. Representative Dubuisson on your bill.
Thank you. And yes, this is my first time before your committee. So
Welcome.
Thank you.
We'll be very nice.
Thank you. The purpose of both bills, for HB470 and 458, is to eliminate roadblocks to employment for people interested in entering the field of cosmetology. I'd like to give you a brief background of the Cosmetology Board for Louisiana. It licenses cosmetologists through hours of education, manicurists, estheticians, salons, instructors, and schools. Cosmetology is taught in high schools, it's taught in technical schools, privately owned schools, and also the Louisiana Correctional Institute for Women, which our caucus of Women's Caucus actually recently visited. The regulation of cosmetology is important for protection of the public. Without proper sanitation, public health is a risk. Through education, licensed cosmetologists can safely provide services to consumers in this growing industry. So this is a package of two bills which represent a negotiated deal that lowers the number of education hours to get licensed while modernizing the Cosmetology Board and gives them the funding needed to better serve the industry. So I would like, as I said, to take up first Reform Bill 470. They have some technical amendments, I believe.
Okay, there is one technical amendment. I'll have Ms.
These are not technical. These are on the date. Yep.
Excuse me. Gives me the board. Excuse me. I'm sorry. Gives the board 1 year to upgrade technology and website. If you would, please.
Okay, so Representative Newell would like to offer those amendments. Okay, so it gives the Board of Cosmetology 1 year to update their systems.
Right.
And what is the number of, I'll ask Ms. Vgrass to read it in and let us know the number.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, this is Amendment 1582. This amendment has been posted online, has been passed out to members. There are two amendments in this set. Amendment 1 is technical, and Amendment 2 provides for an effective date of August 1st, 2024.
Okay. Representative Newell has offered up that amendment for adoption. Is there any objection? Hearing none, that amendment has been adopted. All right, Ms. Dubuisson.
Thank you. In recent years, we've taken many steps to reduce impediments to commerce, including for small businesses. HB470 will reduce the number of hours required for a cosmetologist to be licensed in Louisiana and will create state reciprocity, which we'll talk about more later, so that Louisiana will honor cosmetology licenses issued in other states. This came at the request of a business owner sitting with me today, Mr. Jeremy Idell with Sport Clips, who last year said he could hire 35 to 40 people immediately, but the qualified applicants are being held up by unnecessary and outdated regulations. So last year, a proposal was made to lower the hours required to 1,000, and after much discussion and compromise, we reached this bill, which would reduce the number of hours required from 1,500 to a minimum of 1,200 hours. The longer the program, the more debt the students accumulate and must repay. Also, reducing the time period from 9 months to 7.5 months would allow them to begin gainful employment sooner. Schools would have the option of choosing to extend the hours. These are the following states who have moved to 1,200 hours: New Jersey, Rhode Island, and Florida, while Oregon requires 1,150 hours. Vermont, Texas, California, New York, and Massachusetts are all 1,000 hours. Mr. Adele will share with you his experience and worker shortage and benefits his company offers.
Okay, and just remember to state your name for the record, please.
My name is Jeremy Idell, and as she said, I'm with Sport Clips. Thanks for allowing me to testify today. I've got 12 Louisiana locations spanning from Calcasieu Parish on the west side to St. Tammany on the east side in Representative Dubuisson's district, and currently have 105 Louisiana employees, 13 years in the industry. We've always been short-staffed. I think it was enhanced by the pandemic and amongst the many other industries, so I decided to take a leadership role into finding a common sense solution to the ongoing problem. The current requirement of 1,500 hours, as it is a barrier for entry for the profession, which employs a majority of women and minorities. And this movement, we do not want this profession to be deregulated. It is absolutely necessary to be licensed as a cosmetologist, and there's a national movement going on that we want to get ahead of. But just to talk a little bit about the specifics of how many jobs I have, currently I've got 25 job openings across those 12 locations. We're opening a new location in Central and Baton Rouge later this year, and the holdup is not construction, which is surprising, but actually trying to get employees. So that's the 35 that she's referring to, and I can tell you, if I were able to rapidly hire cosmetologists, I would love to expand across Louisiana. It's important to point out this is not a new concept, as Ms. Dubuisson said. It's currently being done in 9 states at 1,000 to 1,200 hours, and we would just like to replicate that in Louisiana. And thank you for your time, and happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you. Representative Jordan has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a few. I heard Representative Dubuisson talk about reciprocity, but I don't know. Maybe I'm missing it. I don't see that in this statute, in this proposed instrument.
Hey guys, Ryan Haney here, representing Aveda. That's actually going through rules. Is that correct, Jeremy?
Yes,
some of that's
it's
been
not
working
in the
through the
bill.
rules process, so it's not in this bill, but it's been part of the compromise we worked on. That some of the modernization would take place through the legislation, and you're correct. The reciprocity is passed through the rules of the board. And I believe that's actually already been, it's either active or is getting close to its APA process to where it's going to be in place.
All right. Well, I know. Look, we've had these things over several years, so I know that's been a concern for some of the cosmetologists that I've spoken to in the past when we've talked about this, because they want to know exactly how that's going to work. So if you're coming in and you're bringing in 35 workers from Texas, but our Louisiana workers don't get to go over to Texas, or Mississippi or wherever, that becomes somewhat of a problem. from my perspective and from their perspectives, actually. So I think we need to get a little bit more information on that.
I apologize for confusing the issue with that because it was something that we talked about multiple times, but it is not in this bill.
I'm glad to share with you the proposed rules. I believe it works where you only reciprocate with those who reciprocate with you, and you have to have similar requirements. But I'm glad to share those proposed rules with you.
Yeah, we need to look at that.
Yes,
The other thing is, and look, I don't know what you do in the 1,500 versus 1,200, but the 300 hours that you're losing, what are we taking out?
We have some folks here, professional folks with the school here, who can talk about it. I know other states have been able to still have qualified professionals in that 1,200 hour range. To be perfectly honest, I was here last year in opposition to Ms. Mary's bill that brought it down to 1,000. We had seen similar legislation by Rep. Emerson going back many years. This was a compromise effort to get ahead of what we think is coming, which is a push to lower those hours. By giving the flexibility from 1,200 to 1,500, schools who have a more robust curriculum do not have to cut hours. Students would have that choice. If a school is offering it at 1,200 than 1,500, I would assume they would still have to cover all the same material in less time.
Well, and that's why I'm asking the question, because I know we've done this several years, and every year we've heard about, safety concerns, health concerns, all of these concerns. I'm just trying to make sure that the 300 hours that we're cutting don't affect safety and health of the people or the clients that they're serving. So
I know
I would
Kelly
want to know
Blackwell's
from them
here.
what
Somebody from one of our heads of our schools is here. I know she's told me privately. I'm sure she'd tell the group they feel confident they can cover what's needed in that 1,200 hours. But I'm glad to let her speak to it directly.
I mean, that's fine. We just want to make sure. All right, that's all I have right now. I guess I'll ask them whenever they come up.
Okay. Representative Newell.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Madam Chair. I had the same questions that Representative Jordan had. I want to know what was going to change. Would it be less class hours, less hands-on hours? And then I would like to know more about that the reciprocity agreements, like the states that we work with do their classes mirror what we're teaching here in Louisiana, and but also not in an attempt to have our students and our citizens be without a job in favor of someone else coming to our state, but also wanting to make sure that our citizens who do, for some odd reason, want to leave this state and go somewhere else, that they do have the same opportunities to work somewhere else. I had the same concerns.
And I appreciate it, and thank you both for your questions, because, they do need to be answered, and people need to be confident that this bill, we want to do nothing but to make things better. So I would let you take it away.
Good morning.
Thank you.
My name is Callie Blackwell-Peterman. I'm the General Manager of Aveda Arts and Sciences Institutes. We have 5 locations in Louisiana. And
Hold the mic a little bit.
to answer your question about what's the 1,200 hours going to look like in a reduction in curriculum, specifically to the concern of safety, those types of things, the core curriculum remains intact. So the items for all of the basic foundations of cosmetology will be taught in the 1,200. The additional 300, which will be offered for schools that are choosing to offer a 1,500-hour curriculum, will be given in elective form. So additional classes and techniques that cosmetologists can take with them when they graduate. But the core foundation will certainly, the integrity of that can be taught in 1,200 hours. We are teaching it in other states right now for 1,000 and doing so successfully.
Okay.
I wanted to press my button, but I still have a hot mic.
Are you done?
I wasn't.
Okay, you're still on.
I was going to press my button and ask.
You're good.
I want to do it in order. So would you be able to briefly go over what those safety hours, what they look like? All of us are not familiar with the cosmetology curriculum. So what's going to stay in place? Because as you heard, our concern is making sure that the safety is taught and learned by our students.
Absolutely. I can't speak to the exact number of hours the State Board of Cosmetology requires for safety and infection control, but I can tell you that it will not change at all. So the required number of hours as currently taught in our 1,500-hour program will still remain intact for the 1,200-hour program.
Not necessarily the hours, but you said infection control.
Yes.
Is it burn control for relaxers or perms? Cause contamination of chemicals, handling of the chemicals. What are the classes? Not the necessarily how many hours you have to have in each, but what are the classes?
That's an excellent question. I am not a cosmetologist, so I can't speak to.
Well, who answering these
I
questions?
can't speak to exactly the number, the classes that are being taught. I can just tell you the integrity of the hour requirement remains intact.
Is there someone from the Louisiana Board of Cosmetology here that could possibly answer Representative Newell's question?
Thank you.
Sherry Morris, attorney for the Louisiana State Board of Cosmetology. This is not a bill that was brought by the board, so I can answer to a certain extent some of the questions that have been asked about reciprocity and those sorts of things. Louisiana is one of the states that requires a national exam, so the students, no matter what the curriculum is, there's nothing in this bill, as I appreciate it, that would take away the national exam requirement. So they would still have to pass the national exam. On reciprocity, Louisiana has long had reciprocity rules. Provisions in the state law for reciprocity, we are in the process of refining the rules. However, reciprocity is complicated by states having varying numbers of hours, because some states won't allow you to reciprocity unless the curriculum or the training is compatible. Louisiana does have better reciprocity than some other states because we go by the national exam. So if you have a passing national exam score, you could come in. But other states that require 1,500 hours might not accept the 1,000 hour, the 1,200 hours. And that's something that the board has not studied.
Your mic's still on.
Thank you. Because it didn't.
Rip, going to come back. Ms.
No,
Morris.
just I think you were right on it with the safety concerns. Ever since I've been working around this space, I know my wife spends time at salons, and she would always, would be worried if she was getting a skin derm, a facial, or using a chemical peel, or getting her hair dyed. Safety of the public is an utmost concern, and I know that is a big portion of what you learn at cosmetology school is making sure you use the right sanitation techniques and you use all those chemicals properly.
Right. Okay.
So with the reduction in hours, you're confident that the students will still be able to pass the national exam? Their head shaking in
Yes,
the back.
ma'am.
Yes. Okay. Okay. We'll get to the opposition in a minute. And then that. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. And Ms. Morris said that most states look at the national exam for reciprocity. Is that correct? Or some look at hours, or
at least we do, right? So
we look at the national exam.
That's right. So if you pass the national exam and you're from Texas or Mississippi, then you can practice here once you get your license. You just have to show that you passed it.
Okay. Representative Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Along the same lines as questioning from Representative Jordan and Representative Newell, we have on our desks cosmetology curriculum. Have you all seen this handout?
I'm not.
I don't have that. We do?
It's in the
Small folder.
small, yeah, that was
Small
just passed
folder.
out. Okay. Here's my concern. And it follows along the same lines as my colleagues, and that is, it's not just necessarily the number of hours that have to be taken, but the content of the hours. So, for example, this cosmetology curriculum, and I just pulled out a couple of them. Skin cancer. They are supposed to look for skin cancer. disorders of the hair, disorders of the scalp, parasitic infections. That's just a couple that I looked at here. Okay, so what concerns me is not, as I said, the number of hours that's being reduced, but the content that's being reduced. So I would feel much more comfortable knowing what content is going to be removed or shrunk from this curriculum.
Yeah, so I've collaborated with some schools and discussed the reduction of hours. I don't know that until the bill passed, obviously there isn't been a reduction of hours, but I do know that we have a Sarah Dugas from Compass and Hammond that is aware of the bill and has had some initial discussions on maybe that can answer your questions. So if I could bring her up.
That'd be great. Yeah, thank you.
And I think I could also provide, maybe not right now, but a side-to-side comparison, because I know Aveda does have schools in states that are both 1,000 and 1,200. Then they have schools here that are 1,500, right? So they should be able to show a comparison of curriculums, and I can provide that.
Okay, what I would be interested in is what are you removing from the current curriculum that our cosmetologists apparently have to take and apparently are successful in passing.
And it sounds like
the
they were
national
saying it would be
exam.
electives, and so I'm not as familiar with the curriculum as maybe some folks here, but it sounds like your core stuff that you would need for the exam and for safety are in the base portion of the curriculum. And
That's not identified anywhere
and then
that we
there's going to
have.
be electives, which might be maybe somebody can give some examples of electives.
Well, hello everybody. My name is Sarah Duga, and I am the director and owner of Compass Career College in Hammond. We do have a cosmetology program. We've started that in 2009, but I also have other vocational training programs such as nursing, nursing assistant, medical billing and coding. So, I'm in education. When it comes to the cosmetology curriculum specifically, you're looking at 1,500 hours, but the way that our particular program, as many are, you're looking at blocks. In the beginning, you're looking to build the foundation. We do chemical, color, cut, and hair design, which you get all of that basic curriculum that is mandated by the rules and regs set forth by the Cosmetology State Board. We also incorporate a 4-week aesthetics class where they're going to learn a lot of infection control, looking for things like skin cancer and such, as well as all those basic procedures that you would perform as an esthetician. They also do nail classes. All of that's done in the beginning. Only upon completion, successfully completing all of those theory hours, do they actually get into the salon setting of the cosmetology school. The rest of their curriculum is going to be hands-on experience working with the public in a supervised setting with an instructor on staff. So when you're looking at cutting hours, you're not cutting any of the beginning. I would never do that. You're looking at cutting perhaps some of the hands-on experience, what we call the clinic floor. Those last 300 hours, in my personal opinion, is not the make it or break it of a cosmetology student. They learn the basics. They are on the clinic floor, and they get a lot of hands-on experience in that way. Now, granted, they can still pass their state board, in my opinion, because as of right now, the board states, cosmetology board, you can take your theory exam at 1,000 hours. So you don't even have to take the theory exam at 1,500. You take that at 1,000, and that's as it's currently written. So you're looking at simply removing a little bit of the hands-on experience in the salon setting of the clinic floor.
Okay, in my world, we would call that practice teaching or practicum.
Like, yes, an externship or an internship, it's supervised setting on the clinic floor, correct?
So you're not taking away anything that's on this piece of paper?
None at all.
Nothing that's on this piece of paper?
Not a single thing.
But what you are taking away is the practical application of this knowledge.
They would be performing those services that they have learned, yes, in all of the early part of their curriculum, and you're be removing 300 hours of that practicum.
How many hours would they have to do on the floor?
Normally, my students finish all of their theory blocks at about 450 hours, between 450 to 500, depending on attendance. And then they spend the rest of their time on the clinic floor practicing all of those skills that they learn in that setting.
So, given the current 1,500 hour requirement, they would spend 900 hours on the floor?
The majority of their time is spent, yes, on the clinic floor. So in my opinion, that's why I feel comfortable. You know, they start repeating all of these things, and there is such a thing as senioritis. I can tell you that right now. Once you get one of those senior students who gets to that point, I unfortunately have had some students who they're like, you know what, I can do all of this. And I have people waiting for me to get out and start working on them, and they can start making money. I have had some students who decided to tap out and skip the licensure part of things and just start making money instead. That last 300 hours, again, is not the make it or break it. Again, with salons, many of you have seen, even once they get their license, you have cosmetologists who are working in tiers, right? You have a level 1 stylist. You have a level 2 stylist. And that comes with working experience, and you pay for more experience. But to put things in a little bit of perspective, I have an LPN program, which the Louisiana government states that the minimum number of hours is 1,500. We put that same value, not to diminish the skills that a cosmetologist performs in no way, shape, or form. Those are very specific skills and require a lot of practice. However, when it comes to saving a life, 1,500 hours is what we have determined to be the minimum. While I can personally speak to the effects of a traumatizing haircut, it is very traumatizing. However, it is not a life or death situation. And I do believe that these 300 hours do not take away from what our end goal is here.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, and while we are having testimony, I'm going to please ask the audience to refrain from making any comments so that the members up here can hear the conversations. Quick question. I know Representative Dubuisson, you mentioned other states. Oh, I'm sorry. And Rep. Cox, I'm coming to you next. I know you mentioned other states. In other states that have less than 1,500 hours, they're obviously getting their curriculums done in that amount of time. Do we have a southeastern, or we always refer to the SEC and then Texas? So do we have a comparison to what those states offer and then what we're offering, and how do they get it done within that amount of time if it is less than the 1,500 hours?
Unfortunately, I don't have their curriculum as part of my presentation. I don't know. Do you know that?
We don't have their curriculums, but we just know from the testimony earlier, anecdotally, because I know Aveda has schools in both locations, we are able to get everything in.
And I would just like to mention, Madam Chair, is that, you know, for Ms. Dugas to say 900 hours or the practicum, as Thomas mentioned, so that means they're getting 600 hours if they take away the 300, you know. So I just want y'all to recognize that fact. It's not taking away any of the blocks.
And I'm assuming that the Louisiana Board of Cosmetology sets the curriculum?
Correct.
Is that correct?
Which is why nothing would ever be taken away, because it's set forth in the rules and regulations of the Cosmetology Board. They tell us what those minimum requirements for the curriculum are, and we as an institution of education cannot deviate from that. We must teach those minimum requirements. It's been set. And of course, we would do that, and we do our best to not only teach the minimum, but go above and beyond that. And that's usually where the practicum comes into place, because, you know, talking about it in theory is one thing, but then doing it hands-on under the supervision of an instructor is another.
Okay, Representative Cox.
I have a couple of questions. Is the Board of Cosmetology in sync with what y'all are doing? Are they I mean, I'm wondering, are they?
There have been many meetings held with the state board, yes, and those conversations have been had with all of the representatives of the board, yes.
Do you guys use top tech to help with the education?
My institution does, yes, sir.
But yours the only one?
I'm not aware
okay,
of the other ones.
I understand. So that's good because I want to reduce the score of top tech to 15 so we can have people that can actually get out and get work done, be welders, electricians, plumbers. But I saw something on here that was very interesting to me. The wigs and hair additions and all. When I was a kid, my mother worked in a store and she fixed all the wigs. She'd bring them home at night and we had to wash them and fix them. It wasn't really that difficult, but I mean, it was extra money for our house, so there was a bunch of us, so we could fix a bunch of wigs. But I see you talk about that, so they're doing that. And the other thing, and I'll be done, is that I see some of the stuff done in my community, in the African American community. I mean, you gotta be talented to be able to fix somebody's hair, and my hands be hurting after something like that. I'm saying, but you see what I'm saying. I don't want any group of people to lose their effectiveness, and I'm not sure. You understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely, sir, and I do understand the perspective, but also keep in mind that the Louisiana State Board curriculum set forth by the State Board of Cosmetology, a lot of things are not included in that curriculum.
Really?
And, there are certain skill sets which are learned after you get your license. Yeah. And a lot of that comes with the hands-on experience. And even then, you get your license, and the cosmetology field in and of itself is an ever-changing industry. You must continue your education regardless of a license. And, while you're renewing that yearly, you have to stay on trend. You must keep yourself relevant.
Yearly, not...
As of right now, it is an annual renewal, correct?
Is that in compliance with all the other states?
There are some states that might do every 2 years, but I think at minimum it would be 2, but I can't.
And my next bill will address that.
Oh, it does? Okay, yes, well, I that's what I was wanting to know. I mean, I just wanted to make sure the board was on sync with you guys, and whatever changes you make, the board will, of course, use people who are...
Yes, sir. There have been... extensive conversations, and again, they set the curriculum, so we're not deviating from that. We're not changing that. It's purely an hours situation.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. Wherever she is.
Members of the committee, Chairman, if you don't mind, I did want to just clarify for the record for Ms. Newell, everything on that list of different curriculum, Ms. Polly, as you were asking, will all still be included in the required classes, the 1,200 hours. What will be reduced will be practical exam time or practical practice time, which we established is significant right now, and would be reduced. So I just wanted to clarify, it wouldn't be the curriculum that would be reduced.
And when you do practical time, you're in the salon, correct?
Correct. On the
or
floor.
Are you in the...
You're at the institution, you're at the school. However, we have something we call the clinic floor, where is basically our student salon. There's signs everywhere that says student work only, but you are open to the public, and it functions as a real life salon. This is us putting them in that situation. You are the stylist, you are the professional, but here is your friendly instructor who is here to help you should you have questions.
And honestly, we all know that, as I think Representative Cox was saying, that's when you really learn, is when you're doing the job.
Is there any requirement, and I have no idea, to once you get your license, do you have an apprenticeship time, or you're fully licensed and you're out on your own?
The Cosmetology Board does not require any type of apprenticeship. You're passing theory and you're passing the practical, which there are 2 separate exams. You take your theory, you're eligible at 1,000 hours. As of right now, I think it's 1,500, or did they bring it down to 1,400? I'm not quite sure. But you can start your practical exam, which is a very regimented skills exam at the state board. And upon completion of that, you are a licensed cosmetologist.
Okay, so you would, even if we reduce the hours and you got in all of the safety curriculum and what you've described, and I'm assuming that since other states do it at 1,200 and 1,000, you're able to get that education in. You still have to pass the practical test in order to become a licensed cosmetologist.
Correct.
Yeah. One other thing this bill does, which we didn't talk a lot about, is we try to also modernize the board. There's just been anecdotal stuff I heard. It's an old system. A lot of folks have to pay by check. We want to allow the board, or actually the legislation requires the board to update their website to allow applicants to both apply, pay their fee, and renew their license, both for a shop and an individual on the website. And we give them until, I think, August of 24 to do that. We've been told by the board they're going to have to upgrade their computer system to get everything online. And that's why the following bill is a fee increase. Without that fee increase, we've been told they won't be able to update their computer systems. But we think that the industry will appreciate the ability to do that online, to go check their status of their license, and make changes to it.
Okay.
So we thought that was a good positive thing also.
I
for
may
the
add
industry.
one thing. I'm sorry. I don't think I mentioned, something Representative Cox said earlier about the TOPS Tech, being applicable to schools like mine and other programs for cosmetology, is by reducing the number of hours from 1,500 to 1,200, student debt is a real thing. By reducing hours, schools like mine, we charge tuition by the hour. So this would reduce the debt for the student, which is only a positive thing.
Well, and I think a lot of us were questioning that because it seems to me that it should be across the board nationwide, the same amount of hours. And if you have one state doing one thing and another state doing something different, what's the motivation? That's what's going through my head right now. Can we bring back Ms. Morris? Representative Jordan has another question for you. Okay, all right, there you go.
All right. Thank you. And I do want to question Ms. Morris, but just on your last point. So I guess what I'm going to ask you is, if we reduce the number of hours by 300, are you going to keep your same hourly fee rate?
I would evaluate it, but I would definitely have, obviously, an overall reduced tuition.
Well, how can you say that if you hadn't evaluated it? I mean, because look, I know we come here and we say, okay, we're going to reduce by 300 hours, and then that's going to reduce the rate. Mm-hmm. But if you just increase the hourly rate to make up the difference, then it really doesn't reduce anything.
Well, and I wouldn't do that. I can tell you that, and I can testify to this group of representatives that I would not do that. So my goal at the end of the day is to make sure the students get the best training that they can in the least amount of time possible and come out of this with the least amount of debt possible. There's also something called gainful employment. There's a regulation that we had in the past, and it's possibly coming back. And myself, as an institution, I have to be responsible with what I charge students and what their debt will be when they come out of this. So it doesn't do me any favors to overcharge the students, and then at the end of the day, when gainful employment comes back, I'm then judged by the debt these students have. So we have goals that are in line.
I understand that, but I'm always skeptical, and I'm not saying you, but I'm always skeptical when people say it's because student debt is real.
It is.
And saying that we're going to reduce it, but then there are going to be players out there for whatever reason, whether they're with their business model to pay staff or whatever, if they're losing 300 hours per student, and somehow they got to make that money up, so they're going to increase the tuition. So it just doesn't seem logical to me that you wouldn't. So I think to say that we just need to be careful when we make statements like that. But
well, Representative Jordan, excuse me, I know you want to ask Ms. Morris a question, but in my opinion, by lowering the fees, you're going to increase the number of students, so they would make that up anyway.
Possibly. I don't know. We'll see.
Well, and being that not all schools are going to be required to do this, it's an optional thing. You're doing a minimum of 1,200. Not every school will go down to 1,200. That would be the institution's choice. So if I reduce my hours and others stay the same, if I do in fact reduce my tuition, which I will, I would have increased number of students if competitors have higher hours and higher rates.
All right. Look, Ms. Morris, I got two issues. One was the reciprocity issue. One was the safety issue. And so I'm going to kind of just lean back into that. I heard you say earlier, do you know how many states require 1,500 hours?
I do not. Traditionally, and we have to, there's another point that's not been addressed. Some of the states, their licensures are different. Louisiana has a license, a cosmetology license, covers 3 disciplines: manicuring, aesthetics, and cosmetology, which is hairdressing. So we cover all 3 of those. One cosmetology license, you can practice in any field, any of those 3 fields. We also have specified training for estheticians or manicurists where you could have a limited license. Some other states, what they call a cosmetology license is a hairdressing license. So that is one of the issues that we've had with reciprocity, because the licenses from some states are not compatible with our licenses.
All right. And then the other part was, and I heard, and I forget your name, I'm sorry.
Sarah Duga.
Ms. Dugas say that they've worked with the board and representatives of the board. Are you aware of any of that?
This bill did not come before the board. It's not the board's bill. I know that there are some, our board is composed of members of the industry, and some of the board members support this and some of them do not. The board did not take any position, and the board did not see the bill until it was filed.
All right. As to the curriculum, if they take the 300 hours away, are we certain that the curriculum as it relates to safety and health will remain and not be reduced?
I would have to defer to the school owners.
Why
Traditionally,
is
well, the board relies upon the expertise of the school owners because they're the ones that teach the curriculum. We have several school owners and instructors on the board, but there was no real hearing of this bill to gather that type of information.
So no one can, and I just want to be clear because I'll tell you, the 1,200 versus 1,500 hours, the quantity of hours doesn't necessarily sway me one way or the other.
Right.
The quality of the hours and what you have is really what concerns me. And so I'm hearing that everything that they're teaching now as it relates to safety and health will continue to be taught. But you're telling me there might be some school owners that may choose to take some of those hours away if they so desire.
The board will probably have to look at rules to structure the curriculum. There are topics that need to be taught by our rules. The schools have latitude to where they, emphasize the number of hours, and so that's something that would have to really be addressed by the school owners association possibly. The board would have to hear from them as to how much structure the curriculum could have.
So the bottom line is that process hadn't been worked out yet.
No, it has not.
Okay. All right, I have no further questions.
I mean, in all honesty, it wouldn't be necessary to work it out if we don't pass the bill. I know
well,
it's too.
Yeah, but again, the quantity of hours is really of no concern to me. But I do think we need to know, because it's been a big issue in the past when these bills have come up, that has always been about a safety and health issue, that we need those hours because of safety and health. And all I'm asking is, if we reduce the hours, will we maintain the same standard of safety and health? If we will, then fine. Let's move it and move on. But if we won't, then that's a concern. And all I'm saying is, I think we need to determine that prior to it. Well, let me say it like this. It would affect my vote to know that. If we're going to maintain the same safety, I'm with you. Why make somebody sit another 300 hours that they don't necessarily need on the floor? But if they say, well, no, we're going to take away this class and some of the classes and some of the things really that Representative Thomas stated that they should be looking at and trying to observe, when they're servicing a client. If some of those skills are going to be diminished because they aren't taking those classes, then that's a real concern.
I think that same argument is true at this moment in time. We as a school, it is our responsibility to make sure the health and safety of the public is always number one. We service the public now. When they come out of theory, they are working on the public now. And we have to do our very best to protect the public at all times. It is our responsibility as a school owner and as instructors and as students to do all of that now. And we are doing it. And when it comes to those minimum requirements for safety, that is the first thing we talk about. It is the first thing we talk about in every single course that we teach. It is reiterated in every other course progressively. Not only that, but before each client, you have a client consultation and your instructor is right there with you. You talk about what you should do. You talk about what you shouldn't do. It's an ongoing process. The safety is always number one, and that is how it is now. And to change the 300 hours would not take that away.
Okay, can I ask a quick question? We have in front of us this cosmetology curriculum, and it lists all of these personal image, communication for success, et cetera, et cetera. Who determines what the schools teach?
The board.
The board has a rule that requires certain topics to be taught, but there are broad topics. They're not specific.
But you can mandate that health and safety absolutely be not taken away.
Correct. I don't see that it'd be taken away, but the number of hours is not specified. The schools have the latitude to adjust the hours within the topics.
But in that amount of hours, they still have to address what you tell them to do.
Correct. And those topics
so the schools are not determining curriculum. The board is determining curriculum and what needs to be taught.
Correct. And most of them are teaching from similar textbooks, and those are the textbooks used for the national exam.
Okay.
That the exam is based upon.
Just making sure that, because I think it was maybe inferred by someone that the schools would determine what would be taken away and what would not be taken away. But in fact, in hours, but quantity, as Representative Jordan referred to, you determine, not you personally, but the board determines what must be taught and what must be in that curriculum.
That have to be
correct.
Included. Yes.
Okay.
In order for the curriculum to be approved by the board.
Just wanted to clear that up.
One suggestion that was just made was between here and the floor to add that to the bill that it is absolutely part of the curriculum, the safety and protection of customers.
Okay. Go ahead. Yeah.
I just have one thing that I wanted to address for the board. This bill, and I know the other bill is related, but in 470 it addresses two topics. One is the website and the other is curriculum. And the website, as it was said, the board has tried on a number of occasions to upgrade its technology, but not having the funds to do so. So really that portion should be in the fee bill, because if the fee bill doesn't pass, they will not have the ability to upgrade the website without doing a layoff.
Okay. Representative Fontenot.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Look, this committee has typically taken a stance the last 3 years in deregulations. But I like to put that in perspective, and I would like somebody to just verify or say that these statistics are incorrect. Currently, if this bill was to pass, Louisiana would be the second lowest number of hours in America to become a cosmetologist. As I see it right now, there's only 2 states, and Texas just recently went to 1,000 hours, and New York is at 1,000. Is that correct?
Yes.
You know any other states that are less than 1,200?
Yes, I mentioned those earlier.
Would we agree that the majority are over 1,200?
Yes.
And there was some early testimony, I think, by the gentleman that owned multitude of businesses across the state, that this was a trend to lower. So I'm just trying to see where that trend is at and where we will fall at.
Right. The ones that I mentioned have moved to 1,200 at New Jersey, Rhode Island, and Florida. And Vermont, Texas, California, New York, Massachusetts are all 1,000, and Oregon 1,150.
Very good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I apologize. I was talking. Is that it, Representative Potno? Yep. Okay. And members, just so y'all know, the way the board works is now I'm going to go to Representative LaFleur, and then whoever's in the queue next, that will pop up. I don't have everybody's buttons on here. So if you're saying, wait, I have my button pressed, it's going in the order that you pressed your button. Okay, Representative LaFleur. And Representative Cox, you'll be next.
Thank you. Pretty sure Rep. Jordan covered the question that I had initially, but I want to make sure for the record that it is clear, because in response to a question from my colleague about the board being in sync with what we're looking at and voting on today, the answer was in the affirmative. Ms. Morris, please be clear about where the board is on this matter.
The board took no position on this bill. Most of the members were not aware of it until it was pre-filed. We had one board meeting. Since then, we meet monthly, and so they took no position.
They're not allowed to take a position. It's not that they wouldn't.
But the response was that the board was in sync. That sends a message that is incorrect in the response to the question, and I just wanted to make sure the record reflected that. And you're telling me they can't be in sync, so we're not going to have a record that says that they are in sync.
I apologize. That was me, and I probably should have said there were conversations that were had, so they were aware. I apologize for the confusion.
There was no official board meeting at which this was discussed.
Okay. Representative Cox.
I'm going back to Tops Tech, and I applaud you for using those. If the score is dropped from 17 to 15, would you be able to accommodate more people, and would it create a better flow of people for him? See, what people don't understand, I mean, I've been trying to pass this bill for what? I would miss part of last, so it's been almost 12 years.
This bill?
Not this one,
Oh.
but my bill for that she's using Tops Tech.
Oh, yes.
And it defers some of the debt that they get, and it could meet some of the requirements that is needed out in your industry. Well, it's not just there. We need them welders, electricians, plumbers. So maybe y'all want to come up and testify when I have my bill out there. Thank you, man.
Happy to help anytime.
I'll be able to pass this time. All the money.
And we appreciate all the hard work you've done on Tops Tech.
I get beat up pretty bad.
A great program. We love having it. Our students truly benefit from it, and it would only be good for the community.
Okay, Representative Newell.
Thank you. It works. Thank you, Representative Dubuisson, for stating that you would make that amendment to the bill to kind of say what the hours need to look like. Because the 300, and we're making it clear that nothing off this nice extensive list of courses will be depleted. Nothing is going to be deleted, rather. This is still, all of this is still going to be class time. The time that's taken away is hands-on. And with as far as with the safety, because I don't want to make it too cumbersome of a bill and too wordy, but I wanted to make sure that the schools know that their option is not with the safety part of the hands-on curriculum. My sister-in-law and a cousin of mine went through cosmetology school, and a good friend of mine owns a cosmetology school now in New Orleans. And I remember going to her to help her get her hands-on hours, and some days she would say, "Oh, you could come and let me put your relaxer in today." No, you could come get your hair cut today, or today I can only do roller sets, because it was based upon what was being covered at that time. And then as time went on, she could freestyle, as just a matter of speaking, and do whatever it is I asked her to. But at the beginning, it was set that she had to do this many relaxers, this many Jerry curls. I didn't know they were still teaching Jerry curls, but she still had to do so many hours of that, and then she could move on to doing whatever was asked. And I just want to make sure that the schools know that it's certain things, the certain hours that they still have to touch, but the freestyle hours, they can cut those by the 300 that you're asking for. Because what my friends and my sister-in-law was saying was that it was time consuming, that they did have people waiting, but those 300 hours was prolonging them for getting into the workforce, and were losing customers that were waiting for them to finish. So it's but when they left, they were equipped with everything. But these 300 hours, it would still allow the cosmetologist to be trained in the foundation, but just not having that extra time at the school when they could be doing basics, doing their work somewhere else in their own shop or with someone else. So I would like to see where it's spelled out, so that schools don't think that classroom time is an area where they have wiggle room. They don't have wiggle room in that. Wiggle room comes with practicum hours, and only after you've met your mandatory hours in the chemicals, colors, relaxers, perms, and roller sets, basics like that. Make sure that those hours aren't cut. I think that's kind of what the concern is.
It is. I totally agree with you, and that is important. And for my institution, I can't speak for others, but I do think for me, like, we spend 1 month on chemical. We spend 1 month on color, 1 month on cutting, and 1 month on hair design. And you cannot go below that. That's how our institution works. So when it comes to the curriculum and the content, that would never change, because that does me no favors. It does the students no favors. And at the end of the day, the goal is to pass the practical. And you cannot pass the practical without these basics.
Yes.
And our job as the institution is basically to teach to pass the test, because what benefit would it be to spend 9 months to 12 months in school, get to theory, and then get to practical and fail? That's not our goal. So we must continue to teach those things, because that does the best for the student. And on top of which, when you're talking about your hands-on, these are services performed on the public. Mm-hmm. And Google reviews are real. Okay. So if the students do a bad service, that client will let the world know, right? So we have to make sure that every single service that we provide is the best it possibly can be, because we have to make sure that those students understand that as well. We have to make sure we're following those safety protocols. But at the end of the day, you're listening to your client, you're caring about what they're looking for and what they want, and the outcome is what they need. And we work together in that setting. And through this curriculum, as it is set now, which would not change, would be ongoing.
Thank you.
And may I just add, nobody wants a bad hair experience.
No.
For sure.
No, I had one, and it was traumatic.
It is traumatizing.
It was very traumatizing. And I hope I don't have another hair experience, because then I'm going to have to get Rep Cox to do my wig installations for me. And so,
But I also have to add that my granddaughter is a cosmetologist, and she specializes in what I just learned is not called dreadlocks anymore. It's just locks.
It's locks.
So she does that, and she learned that after getting her license. So, cool. There's
specialties you can go into, and we even have some cosmetologists who end up doing aesthetics. It's another version of the license, and you get your license and then you pick a path.
Well, thank you, Representative Newell, for the comic relief.
And I would like to work with you, or if the board can offer that amendment, just to make sure that the schools know what they have to teach, and what has to be a part of the 1,200 hours, and what has to be a part of the practicum curriculum.
Okay, Representative Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You referenced just a few minutes ago that you teach such and such for a month and such for a month. What does that mean? Does that mean that it's 5 days a week times 8 hours? Does it mean 2 times a week for 2 hours?
So our institution is probably one of the only ones we don't do weekends, but ours is a Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. So they're doing
go ahead.
About 7 hours a day. Some students choose to not take a lunch. They work through their lunch, and if they're on the clinic floor taking clients, they get that extra client. They get that extra experience, and that's optional for the students. But at minimum, 7 hours a day, 5 days a week.
Okay, and I'm going to echo what Representative Newell said about the specificity, because I think that's what is giving me discomfort and not knowing what the specificity is. And when you reduce something, what are you losing? And I think that's what we want to make sure, that the important things remain.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. All right, members, the board is clear. Let me read these cards in support. Jeremy Idell with himself, Ryan Haney with a beta, Sarah Dugas, who is at the table. Oh, she filled up too. And Callie Blackwell with a beta, Arts and Sciences. We do have a number of folks in opposition who do wish to speak. We did receive 2 emails on HB470 in opposition. I'll read the cards in support, and if you would like to speak, just come to the table. Keisha Barra with Stellar Beauty Studies and Institute in opposition. Dana Luna, Opelousas School of Cosmetology in opposition. Michelle Hayes, Michelle's Hair Salon in Pineville. Gina Hand, Brooke Voisin, hopefully I pronounced that correctly, Omega Institute, Shelby Chasson, Omega Institute, Burnell Miller, Stellar Beauty Studio and Institute, Robin Rios, Bastrop Beauty School, Fallon Hogart, Omega Institute of Cosmetology, Priscilla Marcel, Omega Institute, and Regina Royston, Omega Institute of Cosmetology. Those are all in opposition. And when you get to the table, just remember to state your name for the record. Okay.
Hi, my name is Keisha Barra. I am the newest school in the state of Louisiana. My program is 1530. We felt, after looking through the curriculum, which we both looked at both programs, Milady and Pivot Point, and we felt like both programs really offered something unique and different, and primarily chose to use Milady, which is the program that I believe was printed out for you, all of the subjects that were in that book. Not every school's program is written the same. So some people come in on a rotation. Some locations are built to where the book study is actually spread out throughout the 1,500 hours. So some schools don't just do their book work first and then their clinical hours. Some clinical hours are spread out throughout the entire program and are collaborated maybe the last 100 hours of their program to kind of put all of their sourcing together. That way it allows smaller locations for students to come in on a rotation, allowing more students to come through the program. If every school was book first and floor second, you'd only be able to circulate X amount of students through your facility. So that's just one thing about cutting out some of our hours on some of our programs would have to be definitely revisited to restructure them. It's not just cutting clinical floor hours. Before I opened my cosmetology school, my mother has a proprietary school that offers phlebotomy, EKG, medical office assistant, dental assisting. My background, I worked next to neurosurgeons for 4 years in the OR as a surgical representative. I so feel it is so important for the sanitation part of our schooling to not be cut. And I do feel that if they cut the hours, although we may be brushing upon the subject, I don't feel like we're going to be able to stay as in-depth as we are currently in our program. And as the aesthetics field is now moving into the medical movement, they're working at dermatology offices, they're working at OBGYNs, they need that knowledge. And not everyone understands that the cosmetology license in the state of Louisiana licenses an esthetician. Yes, it is up to them to further their education. Yes, it's up to them to be dual licensed, but how many women are actually going to do that? once they're licensed to do it, why wouldn't they just go perform and apply for the position at a medical facility? So those are the two subjects I just wanted to touch on, because I think that cutting the hours is definitely going to mishap some of our programs and shortchange women in the future and men.
You know, I think you brought up an interesting point. I guess for me, when I think of cosmetology, I think of stylist, hair. But I'm wondering, and I don't know if this is probably a question for the board, have y'all thought about splitting up the two from estheticians, what estheticians have to do, and because it's not the same thing. Clearly.
I actually brought a presentation to State Board called Ignite to be able to diverse and kind of grandfather in the ladies that are already licensed to facilitate on both sides. But it was...
Okay, got it. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Hi, Priscilla Morissette with Omega Institute of Cosmetology. I've been an owner of the school now since 1996. I want to speak a little bit about, and she was correct on how we move through the program. All schools are unique to their training. So not all schools develop their curriculum that you're going to sit in a classroom for 30 days and just learn, let's say, chemicals, and the next day you're going to do, next month you're going to do just hair cutting. Curriculums are developed differently. You may sit in a theory classroom from 8:30 to 10:30. From there, you're going to move on into hands-on with your own proprietary instructor and within the classrooms. These, again, I'm going to reiterate, this program, cosmetology program, is hair, skin, nails. It is a big program that needs to be pushed through in 1,500 clock hours. We do talk about sanitation and disinfecting and things that we need to do. When we're talking about putting aesthetics, and aesthetics is within this program, we have to make sure that that is reiterated that much more. When we're talking about doing hair relaxers, any chemical services, these instructors are there one-on-one with these students, and this is for every task that we do on that clinic floor. That instructor is there to give a consultation, to teach them that aspect of it. So to lose 300 hours in a school is detrimental to a student. I hate the fact that Louisiana has to lessen. I don't want to feel like lessening the hours is more education for a student. And my other take on this is whenever we're educating these students, we're not educating them just for a corporate salon or chain salons that are only wanting to overturn 15-minute haircuts. That's not what we're training for. We're training for this big picture. We're training for the mom and pop salons that are out there, may have 6 to 7 people working in there. And so we're going to be cutting out quite a bit of this. If we're going to cut back on our curriculums, it's somewhere's going to be squeezed in. These instructors on 1,500 clock hours, with the way this industry is evolving and the stuff that is coming through now with all the microdermabrasion, the dermaplaning, you name it, these cosmetologists are going out there and getting it the same way these estheticians are. So it's that much more pressure on us as a cosmetology school to make sure that we're educating further out of that spread. This is not just a 15-minute haircut. I want this board to understand that we train way more than that, and we will continue to give you disinfection and sanitation the same way we have always done, and every service is met with that. But I don't want to see this industry cut to not even 1,200. 1,000 would be detrimental. 1,200 is a lot for a student to 300 hours is a lot for a student to lose. You're cutting a lot out of it, and I beg you to let us continue training to the level that we have. 1,500 clock hours. We're proving out there you are serviced by 1,500 clock hour students. To take 300 hours from them, you're taking away from my clinic floor to train these students. Students are required, I'm going to speak of my school, a task. They have a certain amount of tasks that they have to do. What we feel can produce a quality, entry-level future professional. You take 300 clock hours and take those tasks that are within those 300 hours, you've taken a lot from that student, and you've taken a lot from the public. And the public is going to be the ones to suffer for it also. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Dana Luna. I am school owner and director of Opelousas School of Cosmetology. And I knew they would cover everything. I'm in complete agreement with all of that. I'm here to kind of speak more on the student side of it. So I have some notes. I have a very diverse student population and clinic floor. Taking away the last 300 hours of my students' salon experience would be taking away them feeling different hair textures, working with different personalities. We are open 8:30 to 4:30, Tuesday through Friday. My students all have extra jobs after school. I accept TOPS. I also accept Pell and student loans. I only have 4 top students out of my 30 right now. So lowering that to 15 would definitely help my demographics get some funding to pay for their education. Of my 30 students, about 25 to 28 rely on Pell Grants to help pay for their schooling. If the reduction in hours would happen, that takes away from some of my students' federal funding that they would not be able to have. They would have to figure out how to pay that out of pocket. So also right now, 750 hours is what's required by Louisiana State Cosmetology to be in the aesthetics program. If you were to be a nail tech, 500 hours. So that right there totals, 1,250. So now we're required to teach hair, skin, and nails in 1,200 hours to students that already struggle in school, who need as much of our instructors' education that they can give to them. I have students that aren't the best high school graduates. They struggle with learning the content to pass the national exam. So I do feel like some schools may have an advantage, but it would definitely be a disadvantage to my demographic area, to my students, also to my instructors, to expect them to teach everything faster and make sure everything's taught. Cosmetology recently added dermaplaning to our license, so we're adding more dermaplaning to our license, but then we're going to take hours away. It puts more burden on my instructors, I feel, to rush through this.
Okay, we have a question. Representative Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Right now in Louisiana, under the cosmetology license, that covers aesthetics, correct?
Yes.
Do other states combine the two?
Correct.
Not all.
Not all.
Which I did
But
want to add,
do
I'm
some-
a transfer
do some
from
or-
Texas. That was
or
very
none?
easy for me to transfer from Texas to Louisiana. I had no problem whenever I moved here 17 years ago in transferring my license. That was very easy.
Aesthetics is a fairly new industry compared to cosmetology. It's just becoming, it's not a fad because it's obviously nails we thought were a fad and it's still here. Estiology is becoming its own entity. It's just not there yet. I do feel in the future, we're bringing in all this machinery and all this chemical knowledge.
And that's where I'm going with my question. My mom owned a salon for 35 years, and I think she closed it sometime in the 90s. And so back then, she was essentially, doing hair, doing perms, doing colors, and most of those things. It seems like now we're going more and more towards the aesthetics area, which I remember when I was on this committee 4 years ago, and I would bring up the concerns of disinfecting equipment and making sure we're following those rules. I would get criticized because there was some deregulation movement. that, oh, all they do is use Barbasol. Well, that's not true, especially today, because it seems like when you start dealing with skin and microderm techniques, you're getting more and more into the medical field and dealing with potential infectious things. So I just get concerned that we're lowering the bar when we're making some of the field more complex. So that's my concern. That's why I was asking, and I thought the chairman made a very good point about, whether the two at some point should be separated, because they're to me, they're very different fields, or they can be, even though they're connected, to normal, common factors of appearance and things like that. So that was my question, to see whether other states treated this differently. But also, I just want to make sure we're getting the necessary education that we need for, to me, a more complex field, or ever becoming more complex.
I couldn't agree with you more, but I do feel like currently it is covered under this license, and we need the time to be able to train them for this. It's unfair and unjust, unethical to bring down our hours and be forced to cram all of this information in this program that, this program has been 1,500 hours for years, and aesthetics came in only several years ago. So we're adding information into a program that they've always thought should have been covered in 1,500 hours, and now all of a sudden they're bringing down the hours but expecting us to cover all three categories.
And my last question is, you were talking about the Pell Grants. Is it because the Pell Grants require a certain number of hours to qualify?
Yes.
Okay.
And what are those hours? Because in states that have 1,000 or 1,200.
Taking away 300 hours would take about a fourth of their Pell Grant.
Yeah, you're looking in the last quarter, from the 300 hours, they'd lose just in Pell approximately $2,500 and something dollars, and part of their loan too. Again, we take on TOPS too, so our students do not. They have two different type of loans that students can get in the first AY1 and second AY2, meaning we have an academic year of 900. This goes into federal, so students can reduce back those loans. So when we talk about student debt, I think most of our beauty schools do a really good job, because we sit one-on-one with them, to reduce back these loans. So when we're talking about debt, we need to look at the schools per school, but our debt is really low in our schools because, thank God, of TOPS that has been put forth to, allowing us to use this, and the students will lose a payment of TOPS also.
Yeah.
So this is stuff that they've earned in school, and now we're going to take it away from them.
Okay.
Will they lose a payment of TOPS that they need, or they'll lose a payment of TOPS because they no longer need it because they don't have the 300 hours?
Oh, they'll lose it because they no longer have 300 hours.
So they don't need it.
But if you reduce it back to 300 hours.
But if she said like schools aren't reducing their tuition, then yes, they will need it. They'll just have to pay it out of pocket by then.
And also, there was speaking of that we can keep the 1,500-hour program. That's fine. But the federal will not pay any money. It's coming that federal, this is something that's coming up, that I have, let's say I have a 600-hour manicuring program. The state says it's 500 is what they require. I chose to raise it 100 hours so that I could better train the student on what's going on in the industry. But federal soon will not cover anything above what the state requires. So if the state is going to require 1,200 hours for cosmetology and we want a 1,500 hour, there will be no federal funds for that.
I got you. So if you wanted to continue your program at the number of hours that you have now,
yeah, it won't.
The financial aid wouldn't cover the extra hours above.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Representative Fontenot.
I'm going to be quick, Madam Chairman.
Let me do this real quick. Just let me read this card in. Oh, I have it in my hand. Vivian Lynn Glaze. Thank you. Like, there you go. From the salon is in opposition. Okay, sorry, Representative Putnam, go ahead.
I'm just going to be real quick. One of you at the table, your tuition for 1,500 hours is $17,920. Extrapolated by 1,500 hours is $11.94 an hour. That is a difference of $3,584. That's exactly 20%. So when we're talking about the Pell Grants, if you reduce by 20%, they're still going to get full tuition paid, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Did you want to say something?
Yes, I
Okay.
definitely want to speak.
Okay, and
I wish everybody was here,
just,
like what we had before.
They
earlier.
can hear. They're in the anteroom. They can hear.
Okay.
And state your name for the record, please.
Vivian Glaze.
Thank you.
So I have a salon that I've had in the location that it's in since 1995. I'm a licensed cosmetology instructor, which they're trying to get rid of that too, by the way. They're trying to get rid of our instructor's license. You can't go to work in New Jersey and go to New York and work. So some of the stuff that's been said today is not true. Everybody needs to do their homework that's sitting here, because the stuff that you're hearing is not exactly true. And Madam Chairman, I can tell by your hair that you don't get a 15-minute haircut. No, ma'am. And I'm so happy
Y'all don't wanna know how long I
this is
spend.
the first year that I've been here that I've seen so many ladies on this committee. And I think that you do understand that when the men laugh that they think that this bill or this is silly, it's not silly. I employ 7 young hairdressers that are all homeowners in Pineville, Louisiana. They all own their own homes because we help them. We know where they start out at. And cosmetology is not for everybody. But the school owners that are here that understand that these students need this and that they need the time on the floor, that is the most important time. How am I going to discover someone that has a cancer cell on their scalp if I only get to see one person for a relaxer, one person for a haircut, one person for a color? You cannot, where did they go? You cannot take away the main part of our industry. So I don't know if anybody in here owns a Mercedes or a BMW or a Jaguar or whatever, but those guys go to school, right? Mr. Cox is gone. For auto, welding, and so on and so forth. I own a BMW. I don't want the kid that has been cut 300 hours working on my car. Our board has been a very good board, and I sat on the board for 4 years, and I was the vice chairman of our board. So some of the stuff that was said about the board, and there was no conversation. There was no, let's get together and try to talk about this, board members, because that's not how this works here. How it works is you've got someone that writes this bill. They bring it to you. You guys don't know what it is to be a cosmetologist. You've never stood behind the chair. Mr. Cox said that his fingers would be hurting. You do not know what goes into it. So I don't know how you can vote yes for it, because there's a dude that wants to put a bunch of little girls out of beauty school in tight shirts to do 15-minute haircuts. It's wrong. Period. Done.
Okay.
I'm a hairdresser. He's not a hairdresser.
Thank you. All right. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Go ahead.
My name is Jenna Hand. I'm the owner of Denham Springs Beauty College. One of the things that I tell our students is make your mistakes here. Because when you make your mistakes while you are in our school, you have us to insulate you. If you mess up somebody's haircut, their perm, their color, their highlight, and that customer gets mad at you, that's okay. I have plenty of other customers to give to you for you to get that hands-on experience. If you don't have that hands-on experience, then when you get into the salon and they do make a mistake, it is going to hurt them. It's going to hurt them financially. It's going to hurt the salon financially. It's going to hurt their reputation. You cannot separate the theory and the practical. They go hand in hand. We learn best by doing. And until you do it, what was learned in the classroom really doesn't mean a whole lot until you actually put it into practice. So as they are doing it and putting it into practice, they understand what they're supposed to be looking for. They understand what are the challenges that come with that. One other question that I do have is, I know that it's been brought up that other states have lowered their hours. My question is there any research that says and supports doing that? Is there any research that supports that and says these students are just as well equipped as the ones at 1,500 hours? I'm not aware of any of that research. And I think it would be a poor decision-making process if we don't consider all of those aspects. If we don't look at the statistics. Are these students really getting out better prepared or as prepared? Are they getting into the workforce quicker? Are they making money quicker? Or are they ill-equipped getting into the salon, getting frustrated because the salon owner does not have time to teach them what they should have learned in school? Most salon owners, they want someone to come in, get in behind the chair, get to work, and start making money. They don't have time to hold their hands. That extra 300 hours allows us to hold their hand, to tell them, you can do this, and you are going to learn it. The more customers that they have in school, the more opportunity for a variety of issues to come up and for them to be better equipped when they do go into that salon, sometimes a salon by themselves. They need to know what they're doing. Taking those 300 hours away eliminates a lot of hands-on experience and preparation to get out there and make money. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, members, the board is clear. I'll ask Representative Dubuisson to come up and close. If there are any members in the anteroom that could come back in, we need a quorum. We're going to vote in a few minutes. I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh, we have 9 right here. 10. Thank you, Representative Presley. Okay, Representative Dubuisson.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair and committee. First of all, I would just like to publicly apologize to my witness, Jeremy Adele, for the person that just was very insulting to him and to his school, because it's unnecessary for people to sit at this desk and make those kinds of statements. So I apologize, Jeremy. So I would like to offer to the committee, I know a lot of great questions have been brought up, and I concur with all of them. I think we need some assurance that safety, which is our most important thing in many aspects of what we vote on, should be added to this bill, and you have my promise that that will happen. And other than that, I just hope that you will let this bill out of committee, and we'll make the changes necessary for the floor.
And just to be clear, that so I'm reading this correctly on page 2, line 4, where it starts about the training. It says not less than, so it'll be not less than 1,200.
Correct, and I appreciate you bringing that up, Madam Chair, because once again, we need to state that this is optional. It's a minimum number of hours. Okay. So for the schools to be so opposed to it, all they have to do is make their schools what they want it to be.
Will you take a question on close from Representative Brown?
Sure, especially from Representative Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you. So, with that wording, though, if we go back to my question of one of the people testifying earlier, if we go to the less than, does that set the state hours at where someone that attends a school with 1,500 hours that they're not going to qualify for federal financial aid? If it's, that's my question.
Well, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I know all the rules and regs of the Pell Grants, but again, I mean, I'll be happy to look into that and give you all a more definitive answer.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, members, there are no other questions? The board is clear. Do we have a motion for HB 470 move favorable? We have with amendments. Okay, I'll make that motion to move HB 470 with amendments. Is there any objection? Hearing none, HB 470 is moved with amendments. Thank you, Representative Dubuisson.